Get ready for Tennessee's next game on the hardwood with our Vols matchup breakdown. We preview the Vols opponent and give you Tennessee's keys to victory here on Vol Basketball Fever. Hello everyone, and welcome in to another Vols matchup breakdown video here on Vol Basketball Fever. I am Nathanael Rutherford here with another matchup breakdown. Tennessee heading on the road once again, but this time not an SEC play. It's actually going to be the Battle of the UTs. Very excited about this one. Tennessee versus Texas for the Big 12 SEC matchup. It's going to be an interesting one from an emotional standpoint, but more on that in a minute. Thank you all so much for tuning into this video. Give this video a like if you're here and watching it and enjoying it. Subscribe to the channel while you're here as well. We're getting up close to 100 subscribers, which I know is not a whole lot, but it's still pretty cool to get there. I'm here very soon. So if you're a Vol fan and you love Tennessee basketball, both the Vols and Lady Vols, subscribe to the channel here and subscribe to our podcast as well, the Vol Basketball Fever podcast or the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast. We're available on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, I guess same thing, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So thank you all so much for tuning in. As I said, Tennessee taking on Texas. It'd be the first time that Tennessee head coach Rick Barnes has been back to Austin, Texas as a coach and not been the head coach of the Longhorns. He spent 17 seasons there as the Longhorns head coach, so almost 2 decades in Austin, Texas. And he's also Texas' most winningest head coach in program history with over 400 victories, 402 victories as Texas head coach. So he had a long time there. He helped really kind of establish the Texas basketball program as a, I don't want to say powerhouse, but as a very strong Big 12 program, especially, but one that made several Elite Eight runs and a Final Four run as well. Tennessee, the real UT, as I'm going to refer to them as, has beaten the other UT 2 of the last 3 times that these two programs have faced off with each other, but they haven't played in well over a decade, however. The Vols won 95-78 in Austin in 2005, which is the last time Tennessee's played in Austin. And, of course, there was that thrilling 111-105 victory in Knoxville with Kevin Durant, Chris Lofton making the shot that he did over Kevin Durant late in that game. Tennessee won that one 111-105 in 2006. But last time these two teams played, Texas came away the victor 97-78, a blowout victory actually up in New Jersey in 2007. So it's been, again, I guess 15 years really since these last two teams have played. And again, it'll be the first time Rick Barnes has been back in Austin since he was the head coach. Or first time he's been back in Austin, I guess probably in 7-8 years. So it's been a while for a lot of these things here. Looking at this Texas squad, it's their first-year head coach, Chris Beard, who was at Texas Tech previously, now his first year at the actual University of Texas. Did a great patchwork job this offseason of landing some quality transfers from high major schools and some from lower major schools that have, were high contributors at their other programs and come into Texas with a lot of experience at other programs, but not a whole lot of Texas, but did a great job of kind of overhauling the roster and bringing in a bunch of new faces and new players this offseason. Texas' 2 leading scorers this year are both transfers. You have Timmy Allen, who's averaging just under 12 points per game, coming from Utah, and you also have Marcus Carr, who's averaging 11 points per game, coming from Minnesota. There's only really 3 major contributors on this Texas team that were on the team last year. That's Andrew Jones, Courtney Ramey, and Brock Cunningham. They're the only guys who were on the team last year and have been at Texas for a couple of years. All of them have been around for I guess, a little bit now. 2 other transfers on Texas roster that Vol fans are going to recognize the names of would be former Vanderbilt post player Dylan Dessou and former Kentucky guard Devin Askew. Both those guys play roles off the bench for the other UT. So again, they brought in, I think, 7 transfers this offseason. 2 of them are the leading scorers, and they have, I think, along with Dessou and Askew, I think they have, counting them, I think 3, maybe 4 of those other transfers coming off the bench and playing key roles for Texas this season. A quick side note, speaking of Andrew Jones, this Saturday's game is going to feature 2 of the oldest players in college basketball this season, and they're both going to be on the court at the same time. John Fulkerson and Andrew Jones are both 24 years old and in their 6th year of college basketball. Andrew just turned 24 in December, so he's 24 in a month or so at this point, but he just turned 24, and Fulkerson's been 24 for a little bit. He's actually going to be 25 in April of this year, late April of this year. So both these guys, born in 1997, both of them are in their 6th year of eligibility. Jones has played in over 120 games at Texas in his career, while Fulkerson is quickly approaching the 150 game mark at Tennessee. So It's rare to see guys with this much tenure playing in college basketball still, but even rarer to have both of them on the court at the same time playing against each other. So that'd be a little interesting side note that I'm sure it will never get brought up during the ESPN broadcast at all. No way. They don't ever like to talk about how old John Fulkerson is. I'm sure they won't talk about how old Andrew Jones is either. The Minnesota transfer, Marcus Carr, has been stellar for Texas in Big 12 play, leading the team in scoring at 14.6 points per game in their 8 conference games so far. He has scored 20 or more points twice this season, and both those instances have come in Big 12 play. He did it against West Virginia and against Kansas State. Timmy Allen leads the team in scoring and rebounding overall in the season, not just in conference play. And he leads the team in steals per game in conference play at 1.6. So both those guys are ones you really need to kind of keep an eye on are Timmy Allen and Marcus Carr. Allen he's kind of built similarly to Josiah Jordan-James, about a 6'6" forward/guard who leads the team rebounding. And in fact, there's really a lot that reminds me of each other, these two teams. If you look at these two teams on paper from their efficiency standpoint, from kind of the stats and stuff they have on the year, there's a lot of similarities. Even how their roster's made up. Again, they both have 6th-year players. They both have a 6'6" wing forward guard, however you want to classify him, as a leading rebounder. Big difference is that Texas has made up a lot of transfers. Tennessee's made up of, some guys returning from last year, but also a lot of freshmen, a lot of young guys. There's only one, I guess technically there's 3 transfers, but not new transfers that are new to the team this year. Only one of those in Justin Powell. Victor Bailey Jr., of course, has been in the program for a few years, but did transfer from Oregon. And you had Uroš Pajic, who transferred from Arizona State. But again, he's been at the program for a couple years now. Texas doesn't boast a great deal of size, but they're actually pretty good at offensive rebounding, even without having a huge size advantage in most games. They also do feature 2 6'9" posts in Trey Mitchell, who's a transfer from UMass, and the aforementioned Dylan Dessou. Mitchell has been very productive this season for Texas, putting up 9.2 points per game and 4.3 rebounds, while also hitting 35.1% of the 37 threes he's attempted this year. So he can knock down some threes. He's an interesting guy to watch, a 6'9" post player who I don't think is the most aggressive and not a traditional post by, I guess, really necessarily. But again, he can hit some threes, so Tennessee needs to watch out for that. Christian Bishop, who transferred from Creighton, is also listed at 6'7" and averages almost 5 rebounds a game to go along with his 6 points a game. So they kind of spread the rebounding out a little bit. Again, Timmy Allen is the leading rebounder, but it's only about 6 or so rebounds a game that he's averaging. So nobody on the team averaging 7 or 8 boards a game, but they kind of spread it around and have a good amount of length to get those boards. And especially, again, offensive rebounding has been key for Texas this year. More on that in just a second. Overall, this Texas team does a pretty good job of kind of dishing the ball and getting some good assists, and they don't turn the ball over a great deal, but they do on defense force a lot of turnovers. Texas averages just under 12 turnovers a game on the season. That is up to about 13 a game in Big 12 play, however, while they average 14.2 assists per game, while averaging basically 13 in Big 12 play. So they're basically more or less kind of even in Big 12 play on an assist to turnover ratio. They're one of the top defenses in the nation in turnover rate, however, coming in 7th on KenPom at 25.3%. So they really love to force a lot of turnovers and get a lot of steals and just wreak a lot of havoc on opposing offenses. They force 16.2 turnovers per game, and this is a key stat for Texas because they are undefeated. They are 13-0 this season when they force 14 or more turnovers in a game. So if they get an opponent to turn the ball over 14 or more times, they have yet to lose this season. But they're only 2-5 this year when a team has less than 14 turnovers. So all 5 of the losses have come when an opponent has less than 14 turnovers, and they're 2-5 in those games. Tennessee, meanwhile, they're just 4-3 this season when they have 14 or more turnovers in a game, but they're 10-2 when they have less than 14 in a game. So Tennessee, not quite a losing record, but still 4-3 when they have committed 14 or more turnovers, and only 10-2, or they are 10-2 when they have under 14 in a game. Unfortunately for UT, though, they've had at least 14 turnovers in 4 straight games. They are 3-1 of those games, with the Kentucky game notwithstanding. But again, Texas is undefeated this year when teams have 14 or more turnovers. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. If Tennessee can keep that number below 14, they have a much, much better chance of winning. And if they hit over 14, Texas has a very, very good shot of winning this game. In fact, speaking of Texas defense, they have the number 1 scoring defense in the country right now, allowing just 54.7 points per game to their opponents. They're still giving up under 60 points per game in Big 12 play as well, allowing just 59.8. They've held their opponents to under 60 points in all but 5 games this season. And ironically enough, and that makes sense, I guess, all 5 of those games they've allowed more than 60 points, they've lost. So they're undefeated when they hold teams to under 60 points, but they are winless when they cannot hold a team to under 60 points. Tennessee this season has only been held to under 60 points twice, and both those are losses against Texas Tech and Villanova. So again, that's another thing to keep in mind is the turnovers, and can Tennessee eclipse that 60-point mark, because Texas has not won a game this year when they've given up more than 60 points. Texas's defense ranks 13th on KenPom in defensive efficiency. So the streak for Tennessee continues of facing these top 25, top 50 defenses on KenPom. But part of the reason why Texas has been, their numbers look so good, why they've held opponents to such a low scoring output, is due to the tempo they play at. Because they are a very good defensive team, don't get me wrong, but they also really like to slow things down to a slog in the game. They have the 348th tempo in the country, according to KenPom. For reference, there are 358 Division I teams. They have the 348th tempo. They have one of the slowest tempos on offense in the entire country, and their average possession length on offense is 18.5 seconds, which ranks 302nd. So they like to really wait until about that, really close to the 10-second mark with 10 seconds left in the shot clock before they get a shot off, and they really kind of operate more in a half-court offense, it seems like, more often than not. Defensively, opponents have an average possession length of almost 19 seconds, which is 354th in the country. So Texas does a great job of not allowing teams to get off shots really quickly, not really allowing a whole lot of fast break opportunities, of making opponents fight to find a shot, and again, holding opponents to not be able to get a shot off until that 10-second mark or worse, I guess, or later in the shot clock. So again, 358 teams in Division I, opponent possession length ranks 354th in the country for Texas. Teams average only 50 field goal attempts per game against Texas, which is the 4th fewest in the country right now. That's not a lot of field goal opportunities for a team to hit. And then teams aren't hitting a whole lot of their shots when they play Texas either. The closeout defense that Texas plays has been great at limiting threes, as teams are only averaging 17.4 threes attempted a game, which is the 18th fewest by a defense this season in the country. And teams are only making 30.7% of their threes against the Longhorns. So not only are teams not getting off a lot of threes, they're not making a ton of them when they actually do get them off. I will say, though, Texas hasn't really faced too many stellar offenses this year. And I wouldn't say Tennessee's a stellar, but when Texas has faced a basically kind of a top 50 offense this year, they've often lost. Vols are right around that kind of 50th mark on KenPom when it comes to offensive efficiency. And Texas has only faced one team this season that's ranked in the top 50 in offensive efficiency, and that's Gonzaga, who ranks second. So I'm not going to compare Tennessee to Gonzaga, but Texas did lose that game against Gonzaga, 86-74. Again, the Zags just have an otherworldly offense. The other two opponents that are kind of comparable to Tennessee in efficiency are Seton Hall, who ranks 63rd, and Oklahoma, who ranks 61st. Texas lost 64-60 to Seton Hall, but they did beat Oklahoma 66-52. So again, Tennessee's will only be the second really top 50 offense from an offensive efficiency standpoint that Texas has faced. And again, they don't compare to Gonzaga, but Texas has a lot of tough tests remaining. They have Baylor still. They have Kansas still, who both those teams are top 10 in offensive efficiency. So Texas has again, they're a good defensive team, don't get me wrong, but they've not had the toughest of tests, I will say, on the schedule up to this point. On the other side of the ball for Texas here, their offense is more efficient than you might think it is just by looking at their kind of scoring numbers, because again, that's largely due to their pace. But they're a top 40 offense on KenPom from an offensive efficiency standpoint, and are really, really good, as I said earlier, at grabbing offensive rebounds, leading to a good deal of second chance points for them. Their offensive rebounding percentage ranks 36th in the country, and Texas is very good at shooting free throws. So if you foul them and they go to the line, they rarely miss. They're making 77.2% of their free throws this year, which ranks 20th in the country. So more of the story is for Tennessee, don't commit a lot of ticky-tack fouls. Don't get goaded into committing a lot of fouls. I'm looking at you, Urosh and Vescovy, maybe Ziegler as well. Don't commit a lot of these fouls that are just dumb and off-ball fouls or just kind of reach-in fouls. be careful because you send Texas to the line, they can ice the game away if they have a lead late in the second half. But just like they haven't really faced a whole lot of elite kind of top tier offenses, Texas also hasn't faced a whole lot of elite top tier defenses, especially not one like Tennessee's. The Vols currently ranked 5th on Ken Palm in defensive efficiency, and that will be the highest ranked defense so far that Texas has faced this season. They're currently 3-3 against other top 20 defenses this year. The Longhorns have failed to score 70 points in 10 of the 20 games they've played this season, but they are 7-3 when they do, because of how their defense has been able to play. So even if they've not been able to put up, get to that 70-point mark, they're still 7-3 in those 10 games where they haven't been able to score 70 because, again, defense has been holding teams a lot of times below 60 points in a game. The real UT, though, has held 12 of their 19 opponents to under 70 points. And in those 12 games, the Vols are 11-1. So when Tennessee holds an opponent to under 70 points, they've only lost one time this year, and they've won the other 11. So Texas is prone to not scoring a whole lot. Tennessee has done a really good job of holding opponents to under 70 points. Again, that's going to be a big key for Tennessee. The scoring and the pace, I think, are going to dictate a lot about this game. Can Tennessee get turnovers? Can they run out and get fast break opportunities? And defensively, are they going to – I think they can do fine with that kind of slower tempo that Texas likes to run, because I think Tennessee – is better actually in a half-court defense than they are in a transition defense, or kind of a having to run up and down on a defense type of play. This will be one of the toughest road tests of the season for Tennessee, and Texas has been really good at home this season. The Longhorns only have one loss at home this season, which was recently, and it was a 66-65 loss to Kansas State. They're only allowing 57 points per game to high-majored opponents at home this season, which all have been Big 12 teams, because Texas didn't have a great non-conference schedule, and the ones they did play were not at home. But Tennessee is also just 2-3 in true road games this season. But I don't know if you can call the Vandy game a true road game. So maybe they're 1-3 in true road games, because that was kind of a home game. It was, yes, away from Knoxville in a different court in Nashville and a different setup. But there's a lot of Vol fans there. I think more Vol fans than Vanderbilt fans, especially without them having students there. So yes, it was a true road game, but in real, to me, true road games, Tennessee's 1-3. Regardless, though, the Vols are only scoring 70.2 points per game on the road this season, and that's being bolstered by the 79 points they scored in the 107-79 loss to Kentucky. So take that out, and UT is averaging just 68 points per game on the road. The Vols have only been really bad at shooting threes on the road. They've made 25% or less of their threes in every road game they've played this year, except for the Kentucky game. So every other road game they've played, Tennessee has not made more than 25% of their threes. I don't think that's going to be any different in this one, because, again, Texas has done a really good job of holding opponents to under 31% on the season and shooting threes, and Tennessee does just a different team away from Thompson-Boling Arena. However, on the kind of positive side here, before I close it out for Tennessee, Santiago Vescovi he's been phenomenal for Tennessee, and he's just been a force for the Vols over the last really month, I guess, but definitely the last few weeks. Counting the Arizona game, Tennessee and Vescovi have played 9 straight high major opponents, because you've had Arizona and then 8 other SEC games. In that stretch, Vescovi is averaging 16.2 points per game while making 42.1% of his threes in those 9 games. He has been on a tear and just consistent. Like he's been consistently getting 14, 15, 16 points. And of course, the other night he went off for 23. That was, I think, a season high for him, I want to say. But even still, if he's not putting up 23, again, you can count on him to get 15 points in a game. I mean, that's just, you can bank on it almost. And now I'm saying that, and I'm afraid I'm going to jinx him. But still, he's been really good. And he's not just been scoring and shooting threes. He's also averaging almost 5 rebounds a game in that span, 3 assists, and 1.6 steals. So he's doing a lot of things. He's not just scoring, but he's grabbing rebounds. He's also been able to dish out some assists, and he's been active on the defensive end as well. In that stretch, that 9-game stretch for Vescovi, he's made 3.6 threes per game. He's right now, I said this on the last Vol Basketball Fever podcast, so go check it out here on YouTube, or again on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. But he is currently making 3.1 threes a game this season, and he's on pace to become the first Vol since Chris Lofton, actually the first Vol ever, besides Chris Lofton, to average 3 made threes a game for a whole season. The only Vol that's ever done it is Chris Lofton. He did it all 4 years at Tennessee. Allen Houston got very close, but Vescovy is averaging 3.1 made threes per game, and he would be the second Vol ever to do that in a season. So he's just having a really good time and on a tear for the last month or so. But that'll be where in this video breakdown of the game this Saturday. Again, 8 o'clock tip-off on ESPN. I'm very interested to see from the emotional aspect of it, Rick Barnes being back in Austin. How does he handle it? How do the players handle it? Do they come out a little more juiced up than they should be? It's a night game, too. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I'd imagine it's sold out. I haven't heard, but I would imagine, again, that Texas fans are just as excited about this as Tennessee fans. It's one of the two major highlights of this year's Big 12 SEC matchup. It's a future SEC matchup between these two programs because Texas is joining the SEC in a couple years. So I don't know how I feel about it. I think on paper, look at it and say Tennessee should win, but I know how different Tennessee plays on the road. And again, they have a win against Colorado on the road, it's not a bad win. It's a quality win, and a win against Vanderbilt on the road, which again, I don't know how much you can qualify that as a win on the road because it was almost a home game. Every other home game or every other road game Tennessee's played, they've lost, and they've played some pretty tough environments against Kentucky, against LSU, against Alabama, and this is going to be another tough one for Tennessee on the road as well. So let me know your thoughts below. Comment down below what you think the keys to this game are. Is Tennessee going to come away with the victory and make a kind of a statement, I guess, about who the real UT is? That'll be the statement, I guess, that's being made. But can they go and get a victory? Does Texas emerge victorious? If you're a Texas fan watching this, what do you think? Let me know your comments down below. Again, like this video, share it around with your Vol fans out there or Texas fans or anyone who likes college basketball and wants to learn about this game this weekend. And again, in a really exciting Big 12 SEC matchup. Again, I'm Nathanael Rutherford. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Go listen to our podcast. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel while you're here. We really appreciate it here at Vol Basketball Fever. We can't thank you all enough for the support. But thank you all. We'll see you on Saturday during the game. And this has been another Vols matchup breakdown video.